The Mongolian language is the official language of Mongolia and largest known member of the Mongolic language family. The number of speakers across all its dialects may be 10 million, including the vast majority of the residents of Mongolia and many of the Mongolian residents of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. In Mongolia, the Kharkha dialect, written in Cyrillic, is predominant, while in Inner Mongolia, the language is dialectally more diverse and is written in the traditional Mongolian script. In the discussion of grammar to follow, the variety of Mongolian treated is standard Kharkha Mongolian, but much of what is to be said is also valid for vernacular Kharkha and other Mongolian dialects, especially Chakha. Some classify the Buryat language as a dialect of Mongolian. It is a typical agglutinative language that relies on suffix chains in the verbal or nominal domains. While there is a basic word order, subject-object-predicate, ordering among noun phrases is relatively free, so grammatical roles are indicated by a system of about 8 grammatical cases. There are 5 voices. Verbs are marked for voice, aspect, tense, and epistemic modality, evidentiality. In sentence linking, a special role is played by converbs. Modern Mongolian evolved from Middle Mongol, the language spoken in the Mongol Empire of the 13th and 14th centuries. In the transition, a major shift in the vowel harmony paradigm occurred. Long vowels developed, the case system was slightly reformed, and the verbal system was restructured. Mongolian is distantly related to the Khitan language. It belongs to the Northern Asian linguistic area including the Turkic, Mongolic, Tungusic, Korean and Japonic languages. These languages have been grouped under the still debated Altaic language family and contrasted with the mainland Southeast Asia linguistic area. Mongolian literature is well attested in written form from the 13th century but has earlier Mongolic precursors in the literature of the Khitan and other Jabay peoples. Geographic distribution. Mongolian is the official national language of Mongolia, where it is spoken by nearly 2.8 million people, and the official provincial language of China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, where there are at least 4.1 million ethnic Mongols. Across the whole of China, the language is spoken by roughly half of the country's 5.8 million ethnic Mongols. However, the exact number of Mongolian speakers in China is unknown, as there is no data available on the language proficiency of that country's citizens. The use of Mongolian in China, specifically in Inner Mongolia, has witnessed periods of decline and revival over the last few hundred years. The language experienced a decline during the late Qing period, a revival between 1947 and 1965, a second decline between 1966 and 1976. A second revival between 1977 and 1992, and a third decline between 1995 and 2012. However, in spite of the decline of the Mongolian language in some of Inner Mongolia's urban areas and educational spheres, the ethnic identity of the urbanized Chinese-speaking Mongols is most likely going to survive due to the presence of urban ethnic communities. The multilingual situation in Inner Mongolia does not appear to obstruct efforts by ethnic Mongols to preserve their language, although an unknown number of Mongols in China, such as the Tumes, may have completely or partially lost the ability to speak their language. They are still registered as ethnic Mongols and continue to identify themselves as ethnic Mongols. The children of inter-ethnic Mongol Chinese marriages also claim to be and are registered as ethnic Mongols. Classification and dialects. Mongolian belongs to the Mongolic languages. The delimitation of the Mongolian language within Mongolic is a much disputed theoretical problem, one whose resolution is impeded by the fact that existing data for the major varieties is not easily arrangeable according to a common set of linguistic criteria. Such data might account for the historical development of the Mongolian dialect continuum, as well as for its socio-linguistic qualities. Though phonological and lexical studies are comparatively well developed, the basis has yet to be laid for a comparative morphosyntactic study, for example between such highly diverse varieties as Kaka and Korchin. The status of certain varieties in the Mongolic group, whether they are languages distinct from Mongolian or just dialects of it, is disputed. There are at least 3 such varieties: Oirat and Buryat, both of which are spoken in Russia, Mongolia, and China, and Ordos, spoken around Inner Mongolia's Ordos city. There is no disagreement that the Kaka dialect of the Mongolian state is Mongolian. Beyond this one point, however, agreement tends. For example, the influential classification of Sanziv proposed a Mongolian language consisting of just the 3 dialects Kaka, Chaka, and Ordos, with Buryat and Oirat judged to be independent languages. On the other hand, Luvzan Vanden proposed a much broader Mongolian language consisting of a central dialect, an eastern dialect, a western dialect, and a northern dialect. Some Western scholars propose that the relatively well-researched Ordos variety is an independent language due to its conservative syllable structure and phoneme inventory, while the placement of a variety like Alasha, which is under the cultural influence of Inner Mongolia but historically tied to Oirat, and of other border varieties like Darkid, would very likely remain problematic in any classification. The central problem remains the question of how to classify Chaka, Kaka, and Korchin in relation to each other and in relation to Buryat and Oirat. The split of T into T before asterisk I and TS before all other reconstructed vowels, which is found in Mongolia but not in Inner Mongolia, is often cited as a fundamental distinction. For example, Proto-Mongolic *til, Kaka, Ti, Chaka, Til, year, versus Proto-Mongolic *tilen, Kaka, Tsoon, Chaka, Tulen, few. On the other hand, the split between the past tense verbal suffixes sn in the central varieties versus d in the eastern varieties is usually seen as a merely stochastic difference. In Inner Mongolia, official language policy divides the Mongolian language into 3 dialects: Southern Mongolian, Oirat, and Bargu-Buryat. Southern Mongolian is said to consist of Chaka, Ordos, Barin, Korchin, Kachin, and Alasha. The authorities have synthesized a literary standard for Mongolian in whose grammar is said to be based on Southern Mongolian and whose pronunciation is based on the Chaka dialect as spoken in the plain blue banner. Dialectologically, however, a Western Southern Mongolian dialects are closer to Kaka than they are to Eastern Southern Mongolian dialects. For example, Chaka is closer to Kaka than to Korchin. Besides Mongolian, or Central Mongolic, other languages in the Mongolic grouping include Dag, spoken in eastern Inner Mongolia, Heilongjiang, and in the vicinity of Takeng in Xinjiang, the Shirongolic subgroup Shira, Yugur, Bonan, Dongxiang, Monga, and Kangjia, spoken Qinghai and Gansu regions, and the possibly extinct Moghul of Afghanistan. As for the classification of the Mongolic family relative to other languages, the Altaic theory proposes that the Mongolic family is a member of a larger Altaic family that would also include the Turkic and Tungusic, and usually Koreanic languages and Japonic languages as well.